What's up, fourth grade? Good to see you back here again. This week we are talking about plants. So two types of plants, talking about the flowering plants and the non-flowering plants. Our PowerPoint is pretty long, so I'm going to go ahead and split it up into two segments because it's all about life cycles. So the first one is going to be the life cycles of plants, and the second one's going to be life cycles of animals and talking about metamorphosis. So let's get started with plants.
Sam, you ready to plant this garden?
I am so ready.
Good, 'cause so am I.
Brought a few of my favorites.
Sam, none of those have flowers.
Of course not. They're gymnosperms. They don't need flowers. They make their seeds in cones.
Well, my seeds are angiosperms. Their seeds are made in flowers, and that is a lot more lovely and delicious.
Come on, gymnosperms are cool too. Their cones expose their seeds to the air so the wind can carry them to a place that they can grow.
Angiosperm seeds are inside a flower or a fruit so that they're protected until they can germinate.
Okay, show off. And what does germinate mean?
Germinate, grow. When seeds are planted, the first thing they do is grow roots to hold them in place. Next, they grow a shoot. And that's what we see in the garden when they start to grow. Look!
But seeds will only germinate if they have enough water and if the temperature's right.
Exactly. Now that it's spring, it's warm enough for us to plant these seeds in the garden. A little rain, a little sun, a little love, and voila!
It's amazing that an entire plant fits inside this tiny little guy. And seeds even come packed with a little bit of food. A lot of gymnosperm seeds have little wings that help them fly away on the wind.
Wings! Now that is pretty cool. Seeds have so many different ways of moving around and planting themselves. They can fly on the wind or get carried away by water.
Yeah, even animals like birds or squirrels can carry them from place to place.
See? Who needs gardeners? Seeds can do it all by themselves.
Plants like angiosperms and gymnosperms make seeds so they can reproduce and grow into colorful new flowers and trees that add color to the earth.
Yeah, my angiosperms produce seeds in colorful flowers.
And my gymnosperms produce seeds in cones.
Seeds need the right temperature and enough water to germinate, and our gardening helps make sure that happens.
And once those seeds germinate, our garden will be blooming with new plants.
Well, these blooms are doomed if we don't get to work. Let's start digging, Sammy.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, so plants with seeds. Now, there are plants without seeds as well, and we'll talk about those.
Sam, you ready to plant this garden?
Sorry about that. Went ahead and continued playing. All right, so let's get into our PowerPoint here. So life cycles of Florida life. Like I said, this is going to talk about plants as well as talking about animals. So we're going to hit plants first. This is SC4L 16.4. Remember that L stands for life. So all living things grow and change in predictable patterns called life cycles. A life cycle is defined as the complete succession of changes undergone by an organism during its life. A new cycle occurs when an identical set of changes is begun. So here's a life cycle of a plant. Most plants go through this similar life cycle. They follow the life cycle of a lima bean. So it starts off with a seed. Once that seed starts to hatch, if you may, it turns into a seedling, and then you get your adult plant. So three main steps. You could take it a little bit deeper, and there's called a young plant and then an adult plant, but this is the generic system here. So most plants go through, here is one of a lemon tree. So we have our seed and then our seedling and then a plant. So once again, talking about the same three main steps. Here's the life cycle of lettuce. So once again, it starts off as a seed, goes into a seedling, and then you have your plant. So you should start to see a pattern, and that's what they want you to see. All right, so a flowering plant. this is its life cycle. It starts off as a seed, it hatches into that seedling, then it hatches, then it continues growing into a flower, and then you need pollination. So pollination is when insects or other animals, wind or water, carry pollen from one flower to another, and it's called pollination. So I think we've talked about it before with the parts of the flower, and the pollen has to be moved from the anther to the stigma. So here we are with another example of our flowering plant. So 1A, the pollen sticks to the pistil. The pollen tube grows into an oval. The sperm then fertilizes the egg cell. The fertilized egg then becomes a seed. The ovary becomes the fruit. The seed grows into a new plant, and then the plant produces a flower. So this is going to be a continuation all over again, continuing happening. It never has a beginning, never has an end. So here is a non-flowering plant. So looking at the difference, we have a seed to a seedling and then into a tree. That's where the acorn development will start to happen on top of that tree. That is your fruit or your flower of that tree. So non-flowering cone-bearing plant, what is the function of each? So what does the leaf and the needle do? What does the cone do? What does the stem and the trunk do? And what do the roots do? So we've talked about this with a flowering plant. So talking about a non-flowering plant, how is it different and how is it similar? So the leaves and the needles, we'll see if it, here we go. Plants that make the cones. So these plants are called conifers. And it's interesting because the word conifers has the same basic beginning as cones. Most conifers are evergreens. Evergreens grow new green leaves while they shed dead brown leaves. Conifers have both male and female cones on the same plant. Male cones make pollen while the female cones make the seeds. Conifers are pollinated by wind carrying pollen to the female cones. So they don't necessarily need the pollinators, the insects, the bees. Their pollen is more so moved by the wind. So pine trees, the largest group of cone-bearing trees. Several pine trees are native to Florida, such as longleaf pine, slash pine, sand pine, pond pine, and spruce pine. So you've probably definitely seen these trees before. They stay green pretty much all year long. So you've also definitely seen it during Christmas time on those Christmas trees. But of course they do die and they do turn brown. Here is a cypress tree. They are also conifers. Bald cypress trees grow best in wet areas like swamps. So you'll see these more so around the swampy areas. Fir trees often grow in the mountains. So we won't see many of these. These are used as Christmas trees, but so that's probably the only time you'll really see them in Florida. So non-flowering spore-bearing plants. We all know that flowering plants produce seeds, and that's how they reproduce by using pollen and fertilization. So with a non-flowering plant, they use these spores. So if you look on the bottom of these leaves, you'll actually see a bunch of red dots. Those are new seeds getting ready to fall off of the plant. Some plants reproduce by making these tiny spores. So ferns make tiny spores that are stored in spore cases. The brown dots on the underside of the leaf are spore cases, and then inside of those are actually the spores or the new seeds of these non-flowering plants. So here are some examples. Here are some fiddleheads over on the left-hand side and some fern frond. So these are two different types of non-flowering plants that fall under the fern category. So here are some mosses. You may have seen moss on some rocks, on some trees. These mosses it almost looks like green carpet. They will grow where it is shady, damp, and dark. So mosses also use spores to reproduce. They are a little bit different than what a fern looks like. You can see on the ends of those tiny stalks that's where those spores are growing out of. So how are spores like seeds and how are they different? So very, very similar as to that's how they reproduce. They're different because you you don't need the pollination, you don't need the fertilization aspect of it. I want you to kind of think about this question on your own too, and we'll dig a little bit deeper when we meet in person. So what is the life cycle of a non-flowering cone-bearing plant? So what we have here is the seeds fall from the cones. The seed spirals like a propeller. This helps the wind carry them. The young tree continues to grow. When the tree is ready to reproduce, it will form pine cones. So in these pine cones, you have your male and your female pine cone, and the pollen will travel from the male pine cone to the female pine cone. Once they are ready to disperse the seeds, let the seeds out, the pine cone will open up. And that's what you'll mostly find laying on the ground are these open up pine cones. You won't find the closed ones unless they fell off too early. But you'll find these open pine cones because what's being released are those seeds. We will do this Venn diagram together, talking about the life cycle of a flowering and a non-flowering plant. So this is just what we've learned so far, talking about flowering and non-flowering plants, talking about seeds, and talking about spores. It is a lot. I'm absolutely aware of it. However, I know you guys can handle it, and that's why I'm giving it to you. This is a continuation from 3rd grade, so you've probably heard some of these words before, and it will continue into 5th grade. You will learn exactly this again next year. All right, so let's talk about life cycles of animals. And where are we? All right, so the video did not pull up. So let's go ahead and just dig a little bit deeper into our life cycle of animals.